if you're playing in the Limitless tournament, I just kind of want to talk about where I'm at and where my head's at and where I think the general metagame is going to be for this tournament. I think for the most part, we are still going to see an ADP dominated metagame. And I'll show you my list that I'm working with here that I think will be just about the standard, if not even more heavily teched for the stall matchup. But one of the big cards that we saw from 2 weekends ago was the inclusion of multiple counts of energy switch. The winning list had 3 energy switch. I've cut back from that. I found that actually only 1 energy switch was like enough to shift the stall matchup. 2 energy switches where I'm pretty comfortable with now. I liked the second one. I just did a little bit more testing with higher counts. 3 seems a bit excessive, but I understand why you would go there. And there are some cuts in here that can be made to go up to 3 energy switch. But some ADP is still going to be kind of the torchbearer, the standard deck that a lot of people are going to play. I expect this to show up in just huge numbers with a few different tech cards that you could add. Fion could be subbed for something like Cryogonal. You could play a Rangaroo from Ultra Prism that can, recycle the cards back into your deck, things like that. Those are 2 cards I would look out for here. 4 Marnie is definitely not the norm, but I would expect people in their ADPs to go up to 3 at the very least, potentially 4. There are a lot of people that played higher counts of Marnie. I think that's a good inclusion, generally speaking. But you should see a lot of this. The second deck and I think it's pretty much the best deck in the format, the ADP-zation with a couple of energy switch. The second deck that I want to highlight being kind of... as like that challenger to best deck is the Magcargo deck. But I think that Magcargo in its current form isn't built to beat the ADP with energy switch. And to be honest, I think the energy switch version of ADP is pretty much a hard counter to this deck. And so I would expect stall to fall off in popularity heading into this next week. I would expect this kind of variant not to perform as well, or I would expect a stall variant with 4 Team Yell Grunt and 4 Crushing Hammer to be the norm heading forward, because you need to be able to remove the energy, not just you need to have more reliable removal of energy via Yell Grunt, via Crushing Hammer. The lists that did well at the last Limitless tournament only had the 2 Yell Grunts. And that's really not enough, especially when you're trying to combat the energy switch version of ADP. So you're going to need to get your energy denial early and often, because what you really want to do is prevent the ultimate ray. That's kind of the big thing. So even if they get the turn 1 altered creation, you really need to make sure that they are unable to get the ultimate ray off. And only playing 2 Yell Grunt, you're not going to be able to do that as frequently. So I would expect people to go back up to the 4 Crushing Hammer, 2 to 4 Yell Grunt in their stall, but I don't expect stall to be that great of a deck heading into this weekend. The other deck that I think is challenging for the best deck in the format, but struggles with stall, is Ross's top 4 Spiritomb list. I've done a lot more testing with this list at the behest of some of my friends, and it is also poised very well to beat the Zacian Mirror. I think that this, against traditional ADP variants, has the upper hand because it's very hard to one-shot an ADP if they have a big charm on it. And then being able to follow it up with a couple of one-prize attackers, even though the Zacian deck is, the ADP Zacian deck is going to like one-shot these and they're taking multiple prizes, they will never one-shot the ADP. So you're free to attack potentially up to 3 times with these Spiritombs. And then you only need to really take a couple of knockouts with the Spiritomb. So I think this list is really well poised. If ADP Zacian is the biggest deck, then I think this deck is really in a strong position to challenge it. It has I would say maybe 60-40 matchup against ADP Zacian in how it's normally built. And so I like this a lot. The problem with this deck is that it is susceptible to losing to stall. It's very susceptible to losing to stall. You don't have any ways to accelerate your energy. You don't have, Metal Saucer plus the energy switch like traditional ADPization, so you're forced to just attach manually one at a time and get that going. So, there's that. There's some things you can do in here that make it a little bit trickier. Again, Cryogonal could come. Somebody in chat is saying Latios. Yes. Infinite Force, you could play Latios. I think that is one of the spiciest things I've ever thought of for this deck. But very, very strong deck overall. And if you are going to play ADPization, I would suggest having some type of counter to this deck. Be it like a Giratina might be good, be it big charms in your own things so that your ADPs are less likely to get knocked out. Maybe even like a Jinx in your own ADP just so that you can move the Shrine of Punishment damage counters off. I don't quite know what it looks like yet, but this deck is a really good counter to ADPization, just loses to Stall. But if we think that Stall is on the downturn, then this deck could be really, really good. I've seen a lot of people talk about a couple of other decks. The first one is the Firebox deck. Let me see if I can find my list here. Firebox was something that got top 8 last tournament, and so people have been talking about it a lot. But I personally don't love the deck. Where's mine? Where's my Firebox? There we go. Okay. I personally don't love this deck. Just it has some consistency issues from even last format, but people still like this. I think it's a good list that was put out from the top 8. Oh, this isn't it. This is the meme one that we made. Yo! Wait. Or is this not the meme one? This is the real one. This is the top 8 list. There was one list that we made that was like a meme version. But in any case, I think this deck is something that people are talking about. Something that I personally wouldn't play. Again, I think it does struggle with ADPization and definitely struggles with the ADP Spiritomb deck list. But people will bring it. They will be happy with their deck choice. I think generally speaking, it's not where I'm at with this. I don't love Fire and Welder based decks right now. When you have like the inherent draw of a card like Zacian, I would just shy away from Welder box lists, which rely almost entirely on Welder to get their stuff going. Obviously you have the Dene, but it's kind of feast or famine with these types of decks. And I think ADPization can weather a bad start better than a deck like Firebox. The last deck that I've seen some people talk about that I would not be too worried about is Pidgeotto Control. And people have been saying, okay, maybe Pidgey is poised to come back because traditional stall, the Magcargo stall or general mill deck, Cinccino mill, maybe just don't quite have it. You need more of a hand control version that, kind of gives up prizes in the early game and then has a stronger comeback in the late game. I don't think this is the answer. I've played maybe 3, 4, 5 hours like yesterday or the day before on Sunday with this list, a few more hours earlier in the week with Pidgeotto Control, and it didn't have the juice that it needed to win. There were a lot of weak spots. The first weak spot is like you have to play unbelievably fast. You have to really, really play fast with Pidgeotto Control. I was finding myself like trying to play as fast as I can, knowing I was making misplays, and then still not finishing within, 35 to 40 minutes. So I can't really recommend this. I can definitely 100% not recommend this if you don't really know how to play a deck like this. And I just don't think that it's right for the Limitless Qualifier. If we were at 45 minutes, 50 minutes, this would be a consideration, but 30 minutes, even in the online client where you don't need to shuffle, there's no physical movement of cards, I think it's still a little bit too slow, and I would not recommend Pidgeotto Control. That said, who knows? I might just say Pidgeotto Control is bad, and then it goes on to win the tournament. I'm open to being wrong there, but for me, this is not it, Chief. I think you want to look towards something like something with ADP. If you're comfortable with Firebox, I would suggest that even over Pidgeotto. So that is kind of the overview where I'm thinking of the Limitless Qualifier going. I think it's going to be an ADPization fest. They're just going to run rampant, and I personally am probably going to play ADP for that event. So thank you guys for watching this video. And I'll come at you live again on, well, let's see. We're going live on Saturday for the tournament, so you guys can come and hang out in this channel and see what we end up playing and how we play it. So I'll talk to you soon.